Hey guys, I hope you're having a wonderful day so far, and in today's video I have the ultimate grand race guide in hopes to help every single one of you guys get better at the grand race. I would like to take a moment to thank you all for the support, as if you did not know, this is the 4K subscriber special as requested by this amazing community. This is for you guys. I'm using all the knowledge that I have from grinding this game for close to 1,300 hours and 4,000 grand races, as well as I'm taking some little things that I've learned from some other racing games. Let's begin with the foundational pillars of what is required to do well in grand races. The first thing is your assists and your settings. It is one of the more important things that you have to do before you can even get into a race, and is often overlooked quite a bit. So we're gonna start off with difficulty, right? So I have braking only for the racing line simply because it is a good visual cue. It helps you kind of have like a regular thing that you can kind of judge whether if you're going too fast on certain corners and everything like that. Auto braking, auto steering, obviously turn that off. Rewind, we're gonna turn that off for grand races because if you leave it on, then it's gonna rewind you back. You want it to just reset you instantly back to the road as quickly as possible, and that is going to help with that. Nitro on, obviously, and cockpit off. Now for global settings, ABS on is a must, simply because it prevents your car from locking its brakes under heavy braking, as well as for grand races specifically. You guys know those race starts are very hectic, you get rammed by other racers, and actually using ABS is faster pace wise. Now for traction control, you can use either sport or comfort. I would suggest using comfort. I've had the most success with comfort. What it does is it modulates the throttle to make sure you don't have as much wheel spin, and it overall helps you have a more stable experience when using your car. Now for ESP, just don't use it. It will slow you down a lot. It tries to stabilize your car by slowing it down. I would highly suggest that you don't use it because it will hurt your pace in the grand races. Now for drift assist, I have it off. Some of the other sweats, they actually use comfort. Try off and try comfort, see what works best for you and maybe works better for your driving style. For counter steering assist, I would highly suggest that you turn it off simply because you want to mitigate how much control the game has over your inputs, and sometimes the game doesn't always do the best option for specific situations, so I would just turn it off for your sake. Now for airplane handling assist, I personally have it on simply because I can steer the plane with just the left stick, whereas if I have it off, then I have to use both the left and the right stick. Now for stunt assist, it doesn't work in grand races, but you can leave it on comfort for the best experience when you do those events, and you can interact with the environment in all the events. Now for steering controls, if you're looking for a challenge and you want to improve your pace immensely, turn on direct mode. I highly suggest it, but if you're going to use direct mode, I highly suggest that you use linearity at 100, simply because if you go any lower, your steering is going to be way more sensitive than it already is, and if you haven't used direct mode already, it's very sensitive. It removes the steering filter that's built into the game that you actually cannot change in the settings. For dead zone, 0. There's no point in having extra dead zone, and highest, put at 100 and you're gonna have the best bet. Now, if you're looking for sensitivity and dynamic max lock sliders, settings, and all that, I personally don't use them, so I do not feel comfortable sharing any settings for those because I don't use it and I haven't tested it, so I don't want to give you guys the wrong settings that might not work best for you. Now for throttle and brake, I highly suggest that you have your linearity at 50, your dead zone at 0, and your highest at 100. It's going to give you the most linear line for your input, so it gives you the best experience when in grand races. So you got your settings, you got some cars, you're ready to race, but wait, there's something else that you forgot. When you start a grand race, you get a lot of vital information, and one of those things is the route. Certain cars actually perform better on specific routes, like if it's a highway or if it's a more technical gutter heavy section. Let's take this route for example. We start off in hyper. When taking a look at the route, you can notice instantly there's a lot of turns, a lot of low speed sections. So you want a car that gutters really well and has great acceleration. Now in the second stint, we're actually in the class Alpha GP, and as you see here in the route, we're actually going on a lot of straights and we actually merge onto the highway. Now for a section like this, you'd be looking for an Alpha GP car that has a very good top speed. Luckily for you, a lot of the Alpha GP cars have a similar top speed. Now for the last stint, we actually ended in the racing class. As you can see, we're still on the coast, but then we go into the city. What you're looking for mainly here is a racing car that handles really well, but also handles the bumps really well. And if you take a very close look, you'll see we actually end on a straight, so a car that has a very good top speed is very helpful. Taking the few seconds that the game gives you to look at the full grand race route is very underutilized, and if you can use it to your advantage, can actually help you when trying to fight for first place. Now let's get into some of the things that you should pay attention to when you're starting a grand race. So as you guys know, grand race starts are very hectic and they can go bad very quickly. A lot of people are just crashing everywhere. So one thing that you can do and add to your arsenal is being aware of your surroundings. This screen right here gives you a lot of information. You can see which cars are around you and know which ones are going to be a little bit of an issue to pass due to their launch. For example, in this clip here, the only threat that we have at launch is this motorcycle that's to our left. Once the race starts, your main goal is to find a lane that doesn't have anyone blocking you, or what many people refer to as clean air. At this particular moment, we have 3 lanes that we can choose from. We can either go to the left of the C6 Corvette, down the middle, or to the right of the C8 Corvette. Before you can make an informed decision, you have to pay attention to the route. If you look at the mini map, we have a left-hand turn coming up. For this particular instance, we're going to opt for the left side, and we're going to try to stay on the inside of the turn to prevent us from getting hit wide into the wall. Once we get past the first left-hander, we're presented with the same issue. We have to make a decision. The left-hand side is too congested, the middle is wide open, but the bike is most likely going to be going that way, and the right side isn't viable since if you look at the mini map, we have a left-hand turn coming up. We're going to opt for the middle here since it is really our only option. The other racers are shuffling around, and we're going to take advantage of a jump that's actually on this route, this mound. We're going to use air NOS and shoot for any opening that there is, and just like that, we're currently in 3rd place. Taking advantage of the environment and as well as finding new ways outside of the tarmac to pass people is a step in the right direction to having better grand race starts. Now let's talk about something that I know a lot of you guys are struggling with, which is NOS management. Let's start off with the basics. All nitrous in the CUE Motorfest is not the same. The top half of your nitrous bar is more stronger than the bottom half, as well as certain cars have better NOS power than others. So in grand races, your goal is to use your NOS in the top half section of your nitrous bar as much as possible. In grand races, there's variables that can easily affect your NOS management, like other drivers, corners, and shortcuts. When starting a grand race, your main goal is to build up as much nitrous as possible to catapult yourself to top speed. However, don't dump all your nitrous because other people's mistakes or your own mistakes can make it so you're off-road momentarily. Once you start to survive the initial parts of the grand race, your main goal is to keep your nitrous bar above halfway, as well as use your nitrous in the top half. Here's a good way to start. Start to use your NOS in spurts at a time. Many drivers will use their NOS as soon as they get a little bit of it, whether if it's consciously or unconsciously, and this leads to them never having nitrous. If you look at the clip in the background, I'm on a straight. I barely use a lot of my NOS. I'm using it very sparingly. My main goal is to get through the gears, and I'm relying on the car's acceleration to help me with that. When I start to get to the last gear, then I start using more chunks of nitrous at a time. Here are some general situations where you shouldn't use a lot of nitrous. Number 1, back-to-back hard corners, or in general, technical sections. You can easily use too much nitrous here and be inefficient. You can use a bit of nitrous upon exiting a gutter. Just make sure your car is straightened out to prevent losing grip, but no more than a tap or 2 unless you're on the verge of losing slipstream. If you're on the verge of losing slipstream, ask yourself this: do I have to dump a lot of nitrous in order to catch up to the person's slipstream, possibly leaving me with no nitrous at all? If the answer is yes, if you are a newer player, I highly suggest that you avoid dumping your nitrous and focus on keeping the nitrous that you have and using it to keep a better overall pace in the race. Number 2, if you're already at top speed. The only exception to this is if you're going into the next car class, since grand races are broken up in thirds, and each third of the race there is a car switch that refills your NOS completely. Number 3, if you're in someone's slipstream. Slipstream is very strong in this game, and I'll cover it a little bit more in depth later in the video. But if you're on someone's bumper, save your nitrous. Do your best to take the corner as well, and if you make a minor mistake, you'll have the nitrous to stay with them. Number 4, going into turns. Don't be the person dumping their nitrous and forgetting there's a turn ahead and not being able to slow down and running off the road. Number 5, when switching gears. This is an easy spot to waste nitrous with or without clutch. In general situations, change gear, then begin using your NOS in bursts. Take this clip for example. See how I'm not using any nitrous in between my gears? This might seem minor, but eliminating this bad habit will lead you to having better nitrous management no matter the car that you use. What about some general good places to use nitrous? Number 1, in the air. Air nitrous is very powerful outside of motocross. Hitting a small jump using a bit of NOS is a quick way to gain some extra speed, But don't be too excessive though. Bad landings can cause you to lose out on some of the speed that you gained and making the use of NOS pointless. Something also to know about air NOS is to make sure you're in the highest gear that you can be in. If you're redlining a lower gear, you're preventing yourself from gaining the full amount of speed that you could. Number 2, when behind somebody trying to reach their slip, and or if you're in front of them trying to break their slip from behind you. This specifically can be difficult simply because it depends on the skill of the driver that you are going up against. If you are not confident in your ability to catch someone, focus on keeping up your speed and staying above half of your nitrous. It is far better than attempting to reach someone's slip and failing and or getting into slip but being out of nitrous and doing so. You can easily be punished for not having nitrous if the other drivers are competent. Number 3, straightaways. Your goal is in general to manage your NOS efficiently, so when you get to straights, you can have sufficient nitrous to get up to speed or relatively close to top speed. If you are nowhere near top speed on highways, you are essentially a sitting duck waiting to get passed. Staying calm and focusing on your own race is a good start to getting better at NOS management. Next, let's talk about Slipstream. Slipstream has been a staple mechanic in the crew since the Renaissance, and your ability to use it efficiently and effectively is the key to pushing your pace and getting more grand race wins. Let's start off with the basics. There are 2 forms of Slipstream. There is Slipstream itself when you're behind a racer and you're being pulled by the person in front, as well as there is drag bump, which is when you're in front of a racer and you're getting a speed boost from the person behind you. There is a massive difference between the two though. Slipstream activates way quicker than drag bump does. Knowing that, you can use it to your advantage, which I will mention later. What benefits does Slipstream and drag bump have? They both make your car accelerate quicker and have a slightly better top speed. Another benefit Slipstream and drag bump have is you have to use way less NOS to reach your top speed than if you were driving by yourself. This is something that can easily help your NOS management, which is something we just went over. Do keep in mind that some car classes feel more punishing when you do not have Slipstream, like Hypercar and Street Tier 1, whereas some classes like Rally Raid and Monster, it doesn't feel as bad. I would also like to note that some classes pick up Slipstream quicker than others, like Alpha GP picks it up the fastest, and it also feels like it has a longer range. Now, I don't think Alpha GP has the longest Slipstream range. I think it could be a side effect of desync. I haven't tested this, I don't have any confirmation of this, but after playing the Crew Motorfest for an extensive amount of time and knowing how bad the desync can be at times, I would not be surprised that it is a side effect of desync. Here are some things to avoid when you are in Slipstream. Number 1, using too much nitrous. Slipstream is very strong, let it carry you. Overusing NOS in unnecessary spots can lead to unwanted mistakes. Number 2, using the same braking points that you normally would use for solo driving. Slipstream is allowing your car to drive much quicker than when driving solo, and if you brake at the same spots you normally would, you could be braking too late and or overshooting the corner and also possibly hitting the person you are slipstreaming with. Braking a little bit earlier than you normally would and coasting a bit is a good way to give space to each other and continuing the slipstream train. Number 3, using the car up front as your guide through the race. If you're just starting out in the grand races, you're just trying to figure out where the routes are and where to go, which is totally fine. However, don't get too accustomed to following the car up front, because if they zone out and they forget to brake, well, you're going to follow them into a wall. Keeping your eye on the minimap is a simple and easy way to prepare yourself for what is to come. What are some things to take advantage of when in Slipstream? Number 1, the acceleration boost. You can get up to speed way faster than you normally would, so don't commit to using a big chunk of your nitrous. This would put you at a NOS deficit. Remember how Slipstream activates quicker than drag bump? Let's apply it. All of the grand race endings have an optimal place to be to have a higher chance of winning. Sometimes being in Slipstream or just staying in front is the better option, but this knowledge comes with a lot of playing time, trial and error, but the higher skilled players that you go up against can counter it easily by breaking slip before the ending and or just holding on to enough nitrous. So I have a clip that happened the other day. In the beginning of the race, I got messed up. I was stuck behind a lot of other people, and I finally caught back up to trigger at the very end of the race. So at this point, I have to make a decision. Do I want to pass here, or do I want to stay behind in Slipstream? For this example, we're just gonna assume Trigger has a full bar of nitrous. Trigger right now is in a very strong position. He has a little bit of distance if he has full nitrous, and if he can keep a good amount of speed around these rocks, he just has to counter whatever NOS NOS I use, and he will essentially win. I'm confident in my decision making, so my goal is to bait out him using more NOS than you should and taking advantage of that. I hold on to the nitrous as long as I can. I use a little bit. My goal is to get back on the road, but Trigger makes a fatal mistake. He got impatient and he started to blast his NOS while in this dirt. If you're not aware, rally cars don't really like this type of dirt. They don't accelerate as fast, so when Trigger actually uses his NOS through here, he's actually not getting the full amount of speed that he would have if he started using it on the road. He gets ahead but runs out of NOS. The little NOS I had that I saved, I use it, and since drag bump never kicked in for him, I win. There is no one magic trick to always make the right play towards the end of the race, but what I will say for you guys to do is to try out different strategies. Try staying behind, using Slipstream, try staying ahead and keeping your drag bump. Try using your NOS a little bit earlier than them, try baiting out their NOS. There's a bunch of different little things that you can do, but it comes with a lot of time playing the game for you to start developing better strategies and overall honing in on your own skills. Also keep in mind, car selection can affect your ability to defend if you don't have the top speed, so keep that in mind. And for the most part, for highway endings in general, you want to be the person ahead. Now let's talk about guttering. Guttering is one of the most important mechanics to learn in the Crew Motorfest, and it's actually one of the fastest ways around the majority of the corners in most classes. Let's start off with the basics. What is guttering? Putting two tires into the edge of the dirt results in your car hooking the corner while maintaining full grip, allowing you to accelerate more than what you would be able to if you were just staying on the road. Something very important when it comes to gutters in the Crew Motorfest is not every car gutters as well or as fast as others. There are some cars that refuse to gutter, so picking cars that allow you to take full advantage of them is important. Let's get into the 5 key points to nailing gutters. Number 1, your line entering the gutter. Prepare your car by being all the way on the opposite side of the road to give yourself enough room. Aim the middle of your car towards the seam of the dirt that turns into the shoulder of the road on the inside of the turn incoming. You'll feel the car get unsettled for a split second and then settle back down. Once you feel that, make sure you are turning with the corner and maintain 2 wheels on the dirt and asphalt. Number 2, your speed. When trying to take gutters, it is very easy to be going too fast. Unfortunately, there is no magical speed that works for every gutter since there are so many different types of turns and also car classes that like to gutter. If you're struggling initially, turn on the braking line. It is a very helpful and easy visual cue to help you build your muscle memory on how fast not to go. Number 3, steering. Like I mentioned before, steering with the turn is key, but there is times where you'll need to correct your steering due to bumps and or going too deep into the dirt. The best dynamic to look at it is like tight roping. Your car is yourself and the gutter is the rope. Try and prevent your car from falling, aka losing the gutter, by making micro adjustments with your steering. One thing also to note is depending on how sensitive your steering is, if it's via wheel, direct mode, and or the sensitivity sliders, will directly impact the amount of input needed in these situations. Number 4, throttle control. Maintaining/managing your speed while in the gutter is crucial. You can lose the gutter easily if you accelerate too hard or too fast. If you are not used to throttle control, start with half throttle and go from there. Your car will be giving you visual cues of it possibly losing the gutter as well as you will feel it. It's better to maintain the gutter by going a little bit slower than losing the gutter mid-turn and getting thrown back into the road or worse, into the dirt. Number 5, gearing. In the Crew Motorfest, being in a higher gear settles the car down, allowing you to gutter more consistently. This is also the case when taking shortcuts over grass. If you're having a hard time staying in the gutter, try being in 1 gear higher than you normally would. It should help a bit. Some classes gutters are really pointless or don't yield any huge benefit like Alpha GP, Motocross, and Monster Truck. These you can do fine without gutters. Now there's 2 other things that can help you when it comes to slowing down, and that is engine braking and trail braking. Engine braking is simply slowing down your car with multiple downshifts rapidly, and if you can combine this with braking, you can slow down your car much quicker. Trail braking, on the other hand, can be used when going into a turn. You essentially apply more brake pressure the more deeper into the turn that you get. A lot of people see this kind of as throttle control, but for your brakes. Now let's talk about shortcuts. The crew is known for the over-the-top shortcuts that save many seconds. In the grand races, there is no shortage of them. I would like to preface this by saying the way that the Crew Motorfest Grand Race updates have been recently, as of the last content updates, a lot of the classes have shifted around, a lot of the routes have been taken out, a lot of routes have been left in, but also some cuts are only viable in certain classes, and some routes are even more rare than others. So for me to be able to get you an entire video with all the shortcuts and each detail needed would be very difficult. Instead, we're going to talk about 3 main components that makes up a good cut. Number 1, minimizing distance. Many of you guys already know, but some checkpoints are very far apart and leave room for creativity in between. There's also some checkpoints that allow you to cut them very generously. Sometimes you don't even need to hit them directly. Seeing and testing if there is a slightly faster route to the next checkpoint is a great skill to add to your racing tool bag and diversify your racing lines. Number 2, speed. Some cuts require you to go off-road, some require you to thread the needle. What determines a good cut is when the trade-off of cutting in whichever way you are attempting is overall faster than staying on the road. One thing that makes certain cuts not viable is you lose a lot of speed or your minimum speed is way lower than if you were to stay on the road normally. Number 3, consistency. Shortcuts are good and fun to do, but if out of 10 attempts you can't replicate it more than once, then it might not be worth it. Consistency is very important, and being able to have a overall good pace is finding your limits and what you can do majority of the time without issue. Now let's talk about something that seems to be everybody's favorite topic, car selection. Now as much as there is people that hate meta, let's be honest. The cars you choose in a grand race will directly influence 1, the fastest you can possibly finish a grand race, 2, whether or not you will suffer without Slipstream, 3, how well you can keep up in highways and or technical sections, and 4, and most importantly, your chances of winning. The meta cars do not drive themselves. You don't start up a grand race, you choose the Agera R, and you're magically in first place. It's just not the case. Your driving matters. The things that I mentioned prior and a couple things left to mention are key to setting yourself up for success. Since the meta cars are ever changing, I'm going to have the short of the most recent meta cars in the description and I'll update it as time goes on. Now let's get into some advanced techniques that you'll see some of the best drivers do. Number 1, keeping track of other racers' Nos management. This is something that many people don't think about. Many top drivers are able to not only race, but have a general idea of how much Nos their opponent has. So in the right opportunity, they can try and break Slipstream. Number 2, flicking your car. High sensitivity steering via sliders, direct mode, or wheel opens up the possibility for some of the lines you can take. Flicking your car in the right scenario can be faster or get you out of a sticky situation. And number 3, bluffing. This is a strategy in terms of mind games that happens all throughout a race, but you'll see it more prominent towards the end of a race. Bluffing is best used when going into a sharp turn. You act as if you're going to send it up the inside of the driver ahead, but at the last second, you pull back. What this does is it makes the driver ahead have to commit. This generally will result in taking a bad line or going wide and ultimately hurting their exit speed and giving yourself a better chance at a win. And that's the guide. I hope that you guys find this information helpful. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, but most importantly, don't forget to share this with other people in the community. I would love for this to help out as much people as possible. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.